Hey guys, welcome to another commentary done on behalf of StarCastTV. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have Stork starting as the teal Protoss. Bottom right-hand corner, we have Yamtube, aka Rush, starting as the white Terran. This is on Ascension, and should be a really exciting matchup. I'm expecting Stork to just beat up Rush altogether. Primarily because Stork is an absolute Terran killer, and he is very, very good, particularly in the mid-game, at carving Terran armies just absolutely to bits, with some really precision play. Just his army, troop movement, everything, the Psy Storms. Usually he plays a really steady macro game and then lofts it into something really, really strong in the mid and late game. Rush, on the other hand, struggles deeply versus Protoss. If you actually look at his ASL 12 run where he gets to the finals, basically no Protoss all the way and then ends up falling to Mini in the finals. Has a lot of trouble. It's his weakest matchup, building a supply depot alongside that command center. And this is a map where, in my opinion, it favors Protoss a little bit just because you have such large droppable main, and obviously that turns into opportunities for recall later, and also Dragoons can absolutely impale that third from the high ground plateau, given an opportunity. So it can be challenging for Terran on this map in particular. In fact, I think it's Artosis specifically in the background have been talking about how in the ASL in particular, it seems like the Terran end up beating the Zerg, the Protoss end up beating the Terran, at least these days, and it's whoever gets the better draw all the way up to the finals. Anyhow, barracks towards the front, no gas take as of yet. Well, actually grabbing gas. So I think this is going to be one. I assume this isn't going to be a two-factory play. Stork going to be that Protoss guy and go for the 12 Nexus, however, in the bottom left-hand corner. This is a three-player map, so going to get that quick economic boost. Now I'm curious if Rush is in fact, let's see if he sends out a scout to potentially punish this or not. Some players, what they'll do is they'll just opt to, after that first factory, lick their wounds, ignore the fact that that Nexus was down, and just try to play economic catch-up from there. 3 SCV in gas, we'll see if that pulls out once hits that 100 mark. We do see a gateway behind this. I'm wondering if Stork is going to follow this up with the Forge defense or with the gateway defense. I assume he's going to follow it up with the double gateway defense, which puts a lot of zealots on the ground. Supply depot along that edge. We do have that initial scouting SCV. Looks like, yeah, only a single SCV in gas currently. Factory being constructed. And unfortunately for Rush, yeah, he's going to scout that 12 o'clock location first. Stork now moving his scout out. First gateway alongside assimilator warping in. And so the ability and the timing for Rush to be able to punish this starting to dwindle, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him. We'll see if he goes Vulture first, but I wouldn't even be shocked if he just did drop the machine shop. And because it is a rampless map, went for machine shop, siege tank upgrade into expansion. 2 Marines blockading the nearby ramp. The probe crossing that SCV to the north. The SCV now on the path. First zealot is out, and actually Stork going for a cybernetics core before second gateway. So playing very, very thin on the defense. Going to try to clog this gap and delay that SCV as long as possible. And I believe Rush, upon feeling that lack of Dragoon pressure, the lack of Zealot pressure, recognized the situation. So just dropping a command center behind this. It is possible that was his plan all along. But yeah, dropping the factory and the machine shop behind this. I'm curious if he is in fact going to go for a siege tank and siege tech here, or maybe go for Vulture Mine upgrade or Vulture Speed upgrade in the mid game. Because that's one thing, is his Vultures have a lot of territory they can move around. And wow, great front door denial here by Stork. And as I say that, able to slip through that corner. 2 zealots, a single gateway thus far, range being upgraded, and a Dragoon. So this is very thin defense here from Stork to start. Fortunately for him, yeah, that is a command center being played, and it looks like we are going to see Vulture Speed as a follow-up. And that will make it a little bit more challenging for Stork to potentially grab that third, as there are just all sorts of angles. So you got this gap here, you've got the plateau over here, and you've got kind of the other angle, the third angle, to potentially attack from that third base. But also a single Dragoon is going to have a lot of trouble dealing with Vultures coming in, even from the northern pathing. Stork, wonder what this probe's up to. Kind of out of the corner. I wonder if we're going to see some proxy tech, potentially. Bunker on the front. In the meantime, more Vultures being produced. Yeah, Vulture Speed going to get upgraded, and it looks like they are going to take that southern route. A Dragoon forward, second gateway being produced. Robotics facility behind this, but it's just going to be 2 Dragoons and that single Zealot. Those Vultures could angle all the way and maybe rush by all of this. try to get to that main, and the Dragoons are going to have to play catch up, and that's 2 probes already dead along the way. Stork's probes scattering. This will help buy some economic catch-up time here. All sorts of probes dying, so the Vulture play, incredible. Yeah, and Stork being punished now for playing so light, and that's going to even up the worker count. Actually give Rush a brief worker lead. And more Vultures on the way. Gateway on the front, and a Zealot blockading. Stork going to need it, and this is also going to slow down that third. The Vulture's scrambling out to try to give that Zealot some positioning. Going to blockade absolutely everything, and more Vultures scrambling. Second gas being grabbed, and this is allowing Rush, as far as the follow-up, to play a little bit more defensively. Vulture's not able to get anything accomplished at that gap, and oh, he's going to go dropship behind this. I like it. Spicy. Also getting an armory. So the Vulture is going to make their way down to the 6 o'clock location, have mines to the north, probably load up in that dropship. So usually you see Protoss creating this chaos. I love this, without the Observer actually scooting up to try to deny. And Stork boldly, despite the Vulture pressure there, still grabbing his third. He's got, what, 6 Dragoons to cover all of this territory, though. The dropship instead making its way to the north. It wants to drop across that northern area. The first Observer is out. Let's see if it goes directly towards Rush's base or if it stays nearby. Dragoons, I think, have maybe sniffed this out because they've made their way back towards the main. Vultures making the way across, but nice defense thus far. 1 probe down, 2 probes down. Now making their way towards the natural. Rush still doing a great job of getting all sorts of kills here. That's actually putting Stork behind in the overall worker count. But he does have this third base that's going to come online a little bit more rapidly than Rush. And so Rush, I would say, in a pretty solid position as he's tacking on 2 additional factories. But this is the stages of the match where things can start flipping more towards Protoss advantage. Observer wandering in to go ahead and see the 5 factory. And is this? It looks like this potentially could be a 5 factory plus 1 weapons push as far as a follow-up. And I'm not sure if Stork has a sufficient economy after all of that battering early to deal with it. He's building a shuttle initially. I guess if anyone can defend it, Stork can. Observer helping those Dragoons clear out mines to the north. Dropship also still nearby, so keep in mind a Vulture could sweep that direction for follow-up drops. Siege tanks on the front to push back any pressure, and Rush actually... No, he's definitely going for some sort of attack here. He's going up to 6 factory to just get a massive amount of units. However, Stork's Observer seeing all of it. Seeing it, however, doesn't mean that he can do anything about it. And that dropship scooping up 2 more Vultures to go ahead and drop back in the main. 3 Dragoons here. Robotic support bay upgrading speed, by the way, alongside. Looks like this time able to drop a mine, well, briefly able to drop a mine, but otherwise getting wiped out. So just expending their lives. Is there something back there? Ooh, I would have missed that otherwise. A Stargate is back here. Reaver being produced. I don't know if that Arbiter or potential anything out of that Stargate is going to be on cue in time, though. Stork currently has a supply advantage, but that's very rapidly going to change as those 6 factories get producing. Dragoons making the way to the north. Maybe to try to catch that dropship in open field. It's hanging out in no man's land currently. Vultures sneaking by, continuing to create more harassment. Actually, a forge being dropped, I assume, to build cannons here. Worker count even, which is honestly way to go, Stork, managing to keep it even, just considering how consistent the harassment's been. The Dragoons in large enough numbers that they're starting to peel forward to kind of close down these lanes. So the Vulture harass should negate moving forward, but this is as all sorts of mech taking the field. Double machine shop on the right to produce a lot of siege tanks and a lot of units otherwise. Stork moving up to maybe threaten that 3 o'clock, or at least engage, and another Vulture somehow able to sneak in. The probes huddled around that cannon, and Rush doing a fantastic job. The probe's just going to have to exit. 2 more Dragoons coming up to support. And actually misfire up on the high ground. Finally able to get wiped out, but that's a huge amount of economic disruption out of it thus far. Shuttle and 2 Zealots making the way around with a Reaver in tow. Let's see if they can get any counter damage done. Speed is there, able to fly over the initial turret. 2 Zealots being dropped to create some disruption potentially. Shuttle very, very weakened, but a free shot. Shuttle gone, a lot of SCVs killed. Not sure if that was worth the Reaver. The Zealots trying to get what damage they can otherwise, peeking up the 3 o'clock, finding nothing. And sweeping around now to the north. He needs to be somewhat careful, though, because this is a huge amount of mech moving up. And Rush leading with an SCV, but I was expecting some sort of push out of this with the +1 weapons into these Dragoons. And this is only 10 Dragoons versus a huge amount of mech, but wow! Stork doing a great job of making the best of it, while some of the units still on the low ground trying to catch up with the rest of them. 2 Vultures spreading through, want to try to trap that Dragoon force in with some mines. Supply count just about even, which puts Terran at an advantage, theoretically. Some Vultures continuing to slow down these Dragoons, which is going to prevent them from being able to do kind of those strike and move attacks. Stork wisely trying to back up to the north to draw those attack forces to the north. Another grouping of Dragoons making their way towards the left flank. So potentially, I think that Dragoon sent to do a little bit of mine clearing. The Dragoons engaging the Vultures to the front before those Siege Tanks sieging. Now the Siege Tank siege and Dragoons grouping up from both angles. This is what I was talking about. Masterful engagement from Stork to peck away at those Vultures, and now with 2 control groups of Dragoons flooding in and obliterating that 6 factory push. I just love watching him execute those sort of plays. It's fantastic. However, Rush, with his follow-up troop count, still should be able to grab that 3rd. Looks like Stork meandering out to grab his 4th in recognition that he might not be able to stop that 3rd grab, so he needs to play the long-term economic game. Stargates remained silent this entire time. He does have a good amount of gateways up. Mines being cleared at the mid position. This is a very assaultable position, though. Going from high ground to low ground, and this is oftentimes where Protoss players can just flat out win it. The Zealot clearing the mines forward. There is a Reaver, but a lot of Goliaths there to engage. The Reaver drops, explodes immediately. Zealots on top of the forward siege tanks, but there's more siege tanks from the south and more reinforcements to come. But Stork able to at least clear out a lot of these troops. Let's see if follow-up reinforcements can reestablish that position from Rush. Otherwise, he might end up having to cancel that command center, which would be a huge victory for Stork. Yeah, cancellation. Big win for Stork over that 3rd, which means he should be able to grab his 4th and maintain that economic lead. The Dragoon's getting a little bit too far forward. Some misfire, and it looks like Stork doesn't want to stop here, getting some mine drags into the siege tanks at the natural. Vultures continuing to try to press up, clearing things out. Now he's going to go ahead and back off a little bit. Dragoons piled in there to, I think, clear some mines at that location. More Vultures streaming out to try to deny additional bases. The probe starting to sidle out to grab that 4th. The Vultures want to hunt it down and wipe it out, while the Dragoons are in the location they're at. Nexus drops, so Stork is able to get that 4th base up online, trying to go ahead and clear mines ahead of this. Stork opening up his natural expansion. I still see that Stargate being silent behind this. At the same gateway count overall, because that's just what his economy can handle. Some Vultures trying to stream in towards that natural, now making their way towards that 3rd, able to at least get a probe right there, so finding some soft spots to sneak through. Getting wiped out there and cleaned up summarily, and that felt like actually a bad trade, as Rush actually needs to think about playing a little bit more economically careful, as he does need to grab a 3rd. Building a command center interior to his base, some mines getting cleared midfield by Stork. So economic reset, Stork with the slight lead, getting that Nexus down well before this command center, as it's going to take forever to float in position. A bunch of factories behind this, though. Looks like we got 3 machine shops to work with. And do we still have the upgrading? Yeah, we're still rolling with the upgrades. +2 weapons, +1 armor is there. And this is without Arbiter support. It's just going to be speed shuttle with a single speed shuttle with bombs to try to equalize things. And this is where the lack of Arbiters, the lack of High Templar out in the field could really, really hurt. Because look at this. This is a fantastic defensive position. Stork gathering up. I don't know that he needs to assault into this. He might be able to just wander out additional probe, yeah, and grab additional base. Applying pressure by clearing out some mines, some misfire up on the high ground, dropping some Zealot bombs along the rear, is able to get some damage on that siege tank, and he's going to go for it. Now moving into it from the high ground with the Dragoons, Zealots leading. Zealot's actually able to clear out and get on top of siege tanks to the north. It's nothing but dragoons left. I would be surprised if Stork continues to press this. Still some zealots there, and now, yeah, gonna back out as lost just scatters of dragoon blood left over. Stork now behind in supply overall, as Rush able to get that 3 o'clock base up and running. However, Stork does have that 4th base. It looks like he's dropping a pylon to maybe grab a cannon to take that inside 9 o'clock location. That's going to be a challenge as vultures are starting to stream out, and he only has, looks like, zealots. 2 High Templar. I don't see a lot of dragoons to counter those vultures as they can start pecking away at these exposed bases. 2 cannons there, still able to get some probe kills. And this is fortunate actually for Stork that he's only losing probes at this location rather than at the inside 9. Never mind. Ha, take it back. Inside 9 got taken out. So the pylon gonna get worked, and now Rush gonna, there's a pylon blockading, but should be able to sneak some troops up there. See if the Zealot, actually if the Zealot can take out that SCV, that could be a huge play. Dragoons making their way back across to open up a potential additional base. So just constant raids to prevent additional bases. Missile turret in the way, that Zealot getting cleaned up, that pylon should get cleaned up rapidly as well. Both players trying to frustrate additional economic expansions. Supply counts even, which theoretically puts Rush in the lead as he takes position of his own high ground plateau. Stork realizing it, immediately backing up. There is a speed shuttle full of High Templar making the way to the north. The pylon actually hasn't been wiped out. Looks like the Vulture is sweeping in, trying to engage that attack force in the middle. So it's going to be able to peek to that top corner. Some nice side storms across the 3rd base for Rush, and maybe even moving into the natural expansion could be absolutely huge. Moving in, dropping huge storms, blanketing everything, absolutely obliterating the SCV count. Now down 10 workers. Massive amount of damage. 9 o'clock base also coming online. And Stork not missing a beat while Rush is distracted, clearing out some mines midfield. And again, going to pocket those High Templar, potentially to do additional storm drops as he moves forward. Rush grabbing his 4th. Stork still going to maintain the advantage as he does have that inside 9. He does need to reinforce, or I should say resaturate, from the units at his main. Stork with a solid supply lead, but Rush starting to take claims out on the map. That shuttle heavily damaged, looks like ran headlong into that turret along its way across. Stork making, I'm going to say, a questionable attack. Mid-map, running into the high ground plateau, clearing mines. Psystorm blanketing that forward siege tank and some of the vultures. Another great Psystorm up that edge, but losing a lot of units in between. Gonna back out because he just doesn't have enough troops to really breach that. The shuttle going to sneak its way across. I don't know that it can survive, actually, across that. I don't know that it can make it to across that turret. Little bit of an early transfer, but the upper right base starting to mine for Rush. That shuttle has been spotted in the upper left. 2 High Templar, I guess, being dropped off with the rest of the army. Maybe we're going to see a dive to that top right. Vulture's going to go ahead and plant some mines. Rush wants to see troop movement as Stork grabbing another base in the upper left. Observer trying to keep an eye on those vultures to keep them out of additional bases as that drop making its way around. Another double storm in the top right and another group of SCVs obliterated. Vultures looking for maybe to equalize things by sneaking either to the 3rd base, finding some probes there, and this should be enough vultures to clear that out. Sneaking through, the Zealot's going to try to march in and mix it up against them as they're trapped interior, but Rush at least able to get some worker kills in counter. An Archon morphed, however, in the meantime in the upper right. That gets wiped out, but still was able to do some continuation economic disruption. Stork grabbing that 9 o'clock now. And man, it has been absolute slugfest thus far. Worker lines, no worker line is safe on either side of the map, it feels like, for the entirety of this match thus far. Shuttle still alive, has been repacked with High Templar, has a, this looks like it's a fresh shuttle this time. Gonna sneak right back out. Shuttle gets wiped out with a lot in tow, so this time it's gonna be a whiff. Not able to establish any kills. Let's see if Stork continues with that now that defenses have been shored up. He's reaching near 200 supply, doing a fantastic job of macroing in the midst of all of this. Bunch of factories, +3 weapons, level 2 armor. Keep in mind this is going, that Stargate has been silent, has been useless this entire time. +3 weapons there for Stork. Usually this is something you see with Arbiters underneath. And Stork once again approaching that high ground plateau. Defense Matrix on the front to keep that siege tank alive. Zealots going up the ramp. And High Templar now filtering in to blanket Psystorm. It looks like blind Psystorms and gonna back right back out, as a lot of Dragoons have been annihilated. Not sure if that was the best trade overall. As Stork regrouping mid-map. Gonna load up some more High Templar. I'm curious if he's gonna once again try to assault, but wow, look, the Rush is not kidding about the anti-air defenses here, dropping all sorts of turrets so he just doesn't have to worry about it anymore. That shows you his level of frustration with it. Vulture's continuing to drop some mines, maybe want to peek in. Stork feeling the same, dropping cannons in large amounts at that 9 o'clock base. Vulture's finding a rude surprise there. Shuttle making its way across again. I just think it's going to get obliterated. That would be a miracle, honestly, if there is any sort of angle to grab here. I would be absolutely shocked. So let's see if he bothers, or if he's just going to take the long angle around and try to drop it third. There are 2 turrets there. So you're going for the far way around. Is he just going to sweep? He went all the way around the turret ring. Still drops, gets a Psystorm, and gets a bunch of SCVs with it. Are you kidding me? Wow. How did he know, first of all? Also grabbing the top left. If I was Rush, I would be fuming right now. Absolutely fuming. That was about as precision a shot as you can get from Stork. Ended up losing a few troops out of it, but still found ground to drop that Psystorm. Unbelievable. He is maxed. Stargate still silent behind this. It looks like he's just going to play at Gateway Man, using Shuttle for support. Has all sorts of bases. Definitely has the economic lead overall. But he will have to deal with Rush's army as it comes out to greet him. +3 weapons, +2 armor. There are Archons to absorb some sizable shots, but this is still going to be a challenge. Rush starting to look thin on resources, needs to start taking territory. And a wall, it's going to be headlong. Some great Psystorms on those forward siege tanks. Defense Matrix on the forward siege tanks as well. Psystorm catching the Goliath, also catching some Zealots underneath, and more Psystorms making their way back as their Dragoons now are only left. Single Zealot making its way up. Rush getting the much better exchange as Stork's army obliterated, plummeting from the 200 mark. Rush all of a sudden with the supply lead, and the siege tanks proceeding forward. 12 o'clock base has been grabbed by Stork in the meantime. If he can just whittle this army down, he can do trades like that at the moment. As long as he stymies this army and forces Rush to constantly rebuild. More Psystorms, finding those siege tanks mid-map, softening this army up. The one thing is that Stork needs to rebuild immediately and somehow get on top of these bases. And I don't see any refugee bases, so it's possible Rush could win this by sealing up that natural expansion. But he's got a ways to travel yet. Zealot bombs. Unfortunately, it is mostly unsieged tanks, not accomplishing any mine drags. More Zealots swarming across from the north, sweeping up once again to now drop on potentially tanks that are sieged. Defense Matrix in that rear. So despite being behind economically, Rush with a huge amount of mech, massive amount of upgrades, now storming across Stork's holdings, wiping out a lot of bases, and Stork absolutely scrambling to try to engage this huge Psystorm over the siege tanks on that high ground. But Rush does need to obliterate Stork and push him into his natural expansion. Otherwise, he's just going to be able to out macro him. Critical moments of this match. Rush also sneaking a base at that interior 3 o'clock location. Looks like he's going to be able to wipe out this 6 o'clock base, and he's threatening that interior 9. Probes have exited that. It looks like they're mostly saturating the rest of the bases. Some Dragoons and High Templar are to the north. It looks like they're just going to go start mining at that 12 o'clock location. More units being fielded. Still some High Templar in shuttles. More Psystorm being dropped to try to clear this. And I think even though this is a small attack force, and even though Rush does have the supply lead right now, Stork is starting to filter in more army, and this army isn't reinforcing. Still formidable. And if Stork is going to survive a natural expansion contain, he needs to get bases up to the north immediately. Instead, it looks like he wanted to try to deal with this one shuttle getting picked off with a full complement, so going to end up losing the interior 9 o'clock, losing a lot of army. He has basically a skeleton crew to try to defend what's left, some High Templar left in between. There are 2 gateways being built to the north to try to get troops, but honestly, this feels like it might be a little bit too little too late. And Rush, with a follow-up mech attack, looks like he might be able to wipe Stork out. Stork, instead of engaging that army head-on, dropping some side storms at Rush's newly established base, creating some interruption there to try to draw some units back to maybe get a more favorable engagement. Dragoons getting absolutely obliterated, +1 shield there. Side storm continuing to be dropped. The SCVs dodging electricity left and right. Looks like 4 surviving. Worker count about even. High Templar getting wiped out over that corner edge. But Stork's natural is basically sealed. You have siege tanks on that high ground plateau. You have additional siege tanks on this gap here. The 9 o'clock is gone, so Stork has 3 bases. But he's got a challenge of where he can field his army. Down 20 supply, but that 20 supply difference isn't right here, as Stork now starting to press forward, dropping more side storm to try to equalize things. Rush still holds, pushing Stork back to his natural. So right now, even though Stork has a theoretical sizable economic lead, you can see he's trying to find locations to try to get this army out of here and is finding nothing. Rush has completely sealed him in, which means it's going to be a follow-up operation. Some nice mines planted there. And siege tanks also sieging that 9 o'clock. A single Dragoon trying to defend this. Vultures moving up. Rush now all over the map to turn this into a victory in the late game. Up 40 supply. Stork still trying to side storm his way out of this, gathering up another grouping of troops. But now I'm going to say things have shifted to Rush's favor, has maintained the economic lead, has managed to get an additional base up. And as I say that, Stork manages to storm across the high ground plateau. Rush reinforcing from what was at the gap. Siege tanks unsieged. But this defense force is looking thinner and thinner. Rush still with a sizable supply lead. Some vultures to the north look like they might be able to do some damage in that upper left-hand corner. Stork once again trying to break out, but as that breakout is happening, the vultures are storming that 9 o'clock. More mech streaming across to reinforce. The high ground plateau is now empty. High Templar are starting to sidle in, but Stork needs to fill it in rapidly as siege tanks and vultures are right there to contest it. Probes exiting the 9 o'clock. They're going to go to the top left. Stork now down to 2 mining bases to Rush's 1, which theoretically actually to 2, which makes it even. Plus, Rush has the economic lead and a death grip at the natural. So Rush, through some fantastic maneuvering, barreling into that natural expansion, and some precision follow-up play, looks like just by being patient, continuing to flood reinforcements, and having a skeleton crew engage what's left of Stork's economy, is going to find a victory out of this. High Templar are getting picked off on the low ground. Stork's economy now in shambles, just barely trickling the resources in. Rush with the overall economic lead, some side storm over the high ground. Looks like Dragoons might be able to get position there. One problem for Rush, though, is he does need to engage 2 locations simultaneously and have sufficient defense at either place at once. And this is where vultures can be very helpful, because they can just run in, pick off a couple probes, lay some mines, and sneak right back out, which is exactly what they're doing. Observer sees those high ground reinforcements. It's mostly just Dragoons and 2 Zealots, though, to try to engage that. And more siege tanks, more vultures careening into that 9 o'clock. I'm wondering if Rush is thinking about just exiting this and going for another push. It looks like 2 cannons actually here in the bottom right, just to deny that base. As far as the follow-up, Dragoons spreading out, waiting for Rush. Yeah, I think Stork is hoping that Rush was going to make his way towards the low ground to engage this. A probe making its way back across, gets obliterated, but is going to spot that army as it's starting to shift and make its way to the northwest. A gateway count has grown back here, but that honestly doesn't seem sufficient to keep up with Rush, who's starting to approach 200 supply again. And between the siege tanks and the mines, well, mine drop clears 1 tank, Clears 3 tanks overall. Almost able to get a 4th, which will help, but Vultures streaming into the upper left. Some siege tanks and Goliaths behind it. The probes now moving to what is going to be the final mining base for Stork. Stork streaming across, shuttle leading. The Dragoons on the low ground. A lot of those siege tanks cleared by Zealot bombs. Wow, the Zealot bombs were effective there. Now it's going to be Dragoon bombs with those mines to follow it up. And actually, the mines doing more damage to Rush than they are to Stork here. Obliterating absolutely everything up there. Dragoons continuing to drop. However, that is going to be it. The Remnants still a 50 supply lead for Rush, as Vultures and Siege Tanks now moving up to the natural of the 12 o'clock base. Comsatting forward. Stork might have one more shot to break out of this at the north, but as more reinforcements are starting to stream to all locations, I don't know. I don't like Stork's odds. Low on resources. Rush going to take the interior 12 o'clock location. Rush backing off momentarily to hold the high ground. Some Zealot bombs grouping up. He might be able to wipe out this attack force, but this is still going to be units that are expended on Stork's side of the map, and he's got a very fragile economy. Can't afford to throw away troops like this. So yes, he cleans this up, but at what cost? Zealots going through that gap, trying to maintain the defense to the north. A stream of Vultures there to greet them, and a whole bunch of mines in between to wipe them out. The Observer coming alongside to try to provide some help, but unfortunately Zealots, even with an Observer, have trouble mine clearing with anything but their own health. SCVs now transferring to that interior 12 o'clock, so it's going to be 2 mining bases. Psystorm over the wall, however, obliterating that SCV line, keeping Rush a little bit thinner on resources. But now Stork boxed into his base as Vultures streaming in. They should be able to plant mines along that barracks line. The shuttle sweeping up. There are 3 cannons here. I don't know that they're going to last all that long. A reinforcement platoon of Dragoons all of a sudden spawning before the mines were able to get planted. Looks like they might be able to clean up a few of the Vultures, but there's still a big minefield and more siege tanks and Vultures rushing through that natural expansion. Stork calling GG right there. Rush with the turnaround, able to pull the victory. Great play from Rush. And I hate to see it because I love seeing Stork win, but I have to give it to Rush. That was fantastic turnaround. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.